In this video, we're going to be talking about the best skateboard setup for someone who's brand new to skateboarding, specifically centered around adults, but a lot of what I'm going to say could apply to, people who are younger as well. But we're going to talk about what is the absolute best setup, what I recommend. Some of what I say, some people might disagree with. If you disagree with anything that I say in this video, I would love for you to put it in the comments. I'm targeting this video towards people who are new to skating and they're not sure what setup to get. So yeah, let's get into it. We're back at the yellow curb spot. Good old yellow curb. Let's see if it's sliding at all today. Oh yeah, it's sliding all right. Probably should warm up first though. I'm gonna get one no slide, then I'm gonna start talking. Oh, and I'm a little congested. I kind of was sick all week, so the level of skating might be a little bit low today. That's okay. It's beautiful outside. I'm having fun, but definitely congested, and my voice might sound a little weird in this video. All right, we're gonna take that for our first little nose slide. Some of my opinions might be a little bit controversial on what makes a good beginner skateboard setup. If you have a different opinion, let us know, but I do have reasons for why I believe each part of the board, what would be the best for a beginner skater. So let's dive into the first basic one, bearings. So bearings are what allow your wheels to spin. They help you maintain speed while you're skateboarding. My number one recommendation with bearings is don't spend a lot of money on them. I don't really understand the point of super expensive bearings. For example, like there's like ceramics bearings and things like that that are way more expensive and I don't believe provide any performance benefit or also don't even last any longer. So I have two basic recommendations for bearings. Bones Reds are probably the most common that you'll hear people suggest. Bones Reds bearings. Those are great. I personally skate Bronson G3s, which are similarly priced, right around that $15 to $20 range for your bearings. And I've just found that Bronsons last way, way longer. I know a lot of people will disagree with that. I've been skating with these Bronson G3s. Let me move a little closer. These Bronson G3s in my board for well over a year. I've commuted in New York City with them. So they've, probably gotten their fair share of exposure to gunk and gross stuff as I've been skating on the streets in New York City. And they still spin super, super effortlessly. I don't have a single bearing that has messed up. Typically when I've skated Bones, they've lasted months. But then kind of gotten like crunchy and slower. So I don't know if it's just the shields that are better with the Bronsons, but they have done better for me. So Bronson G3s, don't spend more than $20 on bearings. It's just not worth it. Oh! Shove it into board slide. Whoa! Oh my gosh. After being sick all week, having a fever, my legs are like toast. Toast, toast. All right, there we go. So as I'm recording, I'm going to be going in order of different parts of the board. The next part, we're going smallest to largest. So the next part is going to be our wheels that we're going to talk about. And this one might be somewhat controversial, but I think is super, super important. And maybe one of the things that skaters don't think about a lot when they get a new board for the first time, but actually really, really important. Let's get a kickflip and a heel flip. Oh, almost first try today. I didn't expect that to be so easy. Oh, no pop. Oh my gosh, we almost got it second try. My heel did touch though. I'm curious what y'all think. Let me know in the comments. Side angle versus kind of straight on angle. Is one better than the other? Or is it better to just kind of mix up the camera angles? There we go. Flip tricks feel good today. Let's talk about wheels. Now, this is, I think, is one of, if not the most overlooked parts of the skateboard. So I brought some of my old wheels to talk about what I've gotten in the past. This is probably the biggest mistake I made when buying my first board as an adult. So if you've seen my previous videos, I got back into skateboarding at 27 years old. I'm 34 now. At 27, when I started skating again, I bought a deck that had really, really small, I think these are them, really small 100A or maybe even 101A wheels. I think they were 50 or 51 millimeters. So really small. And the reason I bought those is I watched a lot of skateboard YouTube channels, specifically centered around California, skaters in California, and like pro level skaters that kept saying, you know, harder wheels are going to make you roll faster, blah, 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 blah. Now, the reason that advice ended up being not the best is I didn't live in California. I didn't have smooth skate parks. At the time, I lived in Memphis, Tennessee. We had a couple skate parks that I skated at that had pretty rough ground. And then the street spots that I skated, like kind of like this area where it's a basketball court, had rough ground as well. So what happens with a smaller wheel and a harder wheel, the more it's impacted by bumps. So if we're rolling on a bumpy surface and we have a really small wheel and we hit either pebbles or cracks or things like that, a smaller wheel goes into the crack or gets impacted by the pebble more, and it has those moments where you kind of stop and fall forward on your board. The reason that that's bad for a beginner skater is a lot of times when we're practicing our tricks rolling, like a rolling ollie, rolling kick flip, rolling shove it, whatever the trick we're working on is, we roll kind of at a slower speed. If you're going super fast and you're hauling on your skateboard, those bumps and cracks are not going to be quite as noticeable. So two things. One, I noticed all the skaters recommending those were skaters who skate really fast, who you know, might not be impacted by small bumps and cracks and things like that. And secondly, they were skaters who are skating in California at very, very smooth skate parks. So I was trying to skate with this small 100A wheel. Even if I didn't get fully stopped by a crack or a bump, it would still just like subtly impact my speed, and I'd be trying to roll slow, but it would be more of like a boom, 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 and I'm trying to roll slow, but like my speed is just like changing constantly, which then makes balancing for the trick difficult. Smaller, harder, more impacted by bumps. I do not recommend for a brand new beginner skater to skate these, even though these are probably one of the most popular styles of wheels in skateboarding. One benefit of a hard wheel is typically it doesn't bounce quite as much. So when you're doing a trick and you land, you kind of like stick to the ground. You don't really have much bounce, which makes it a little bit easier to land. The other benefit of a hard wheel is sliding. So when I'm doing nose slides and I have a harder wheel, I'm going to be just stick to the curb a lot less. So that's why people skate hard wheels. After that experience, I got real frustrated with this. Then I bought this wheel. This is a Mini Logo 90A. It was listed as a hybrid wheel. It's a little bit wider, pretty squared shape. And my thought was, well, if I get this softer wheel, I'll be able to roll over that rough ground. And you know what? It worked. It was very, very good for rolling over rough ground. This is what I would say, hybrid is a good word for it. It's like halfway between a cruiser wheel and a trick wheel. The problem though is it's very bouncy and also very, very sticky. If you try to do a 50-50 on a metal rail, the side of the wheel would stick on the rail. And when you'd land a trick, your board would just kind of bounce. So it made landing tricks really, really difficult unless you landed perfectly. So this was my attempt at trying to find kind of a wheel to bridge the gap between a cruiser wheel and a trick wheel. So then I kind of switched to this tablet shape Spitfire wheel 99A. I tried to commute in New York with this wheel on a skateboard, and I had to expend a lot of energy to get to where I was going because of it being still a smaller and harder wheel. So I would get exhausted on my ride to work. And when I was pushing on my commutes to work, my legs would literally get exhausted and would kind of hurt from the vibrations in the road if it was a long push. So that's something to be aware of too. So a hard wheel like this, only get that if you like literally plan on only skating at skate parks, and that's it. So that brings us to what I'm actually skating now and what I recommend for newer skaters. A wheel came out a few years ago that I believe kind of changed the game in skating. It was like one of those technologies that was subtle but actually makes a massive, massive difference, and that was the Dragon Formula wheels. So if you don't know what that is, they came out with this 93A Dragon Formula wheel, which was kind of the same concept as this, but without the downfalls of the bounciness and sticking on the rails. So that 93A Dragon Formula wheel still slid like a hard wheel, but rode like a softer wheel. So I could commute on my board to work and then go skate at the skate park and not have to change my wheels or anything like that. It was amazing. I loved those wheels. I do think the 93A was a little too far on the soft side for me personally. After the Dragon Formula wheels came out, Bones came out with a X Formula, which was the same kind of concept. And then after that, Spitfire came out with their soft sliders. So now the main brands, Pal Peralta, Bones, and Spitfire all have a version of these. So you can kind of choose your preference. But soft sliders 97As or 93As, I can't remember, 93 I think it is, or Bones X Formula 97A. Those are going to kind of give you the benefits of riding on rougher surfaces without getting impacted by every small little crack. And those are going to also still allow you to do tricks. I think especially for adults, because they are going to save some energy on your legs. They're going to have a little more shock absorption. So I just think they're the absolute best wheel for a beginner. When it comes to wheel shape, I think it's personal preference. Smaller is going to allow your board to flip easier. Larger wheels are going to get impacted a little less by bumps and cracks. Because the 97A is a little bit softer, I found that I can actually run the smaller shape, and it works perfectly fine for me. So I really like the small 97X. And then size. I should mention size for the wheels. So the millimeter sizing affects how large or small the wheel is. If you are skating street and you are flipping your board a lot, I recommend somewhere in the 52 range, 52 millimeters down to 50. That's usually like a good range. If you're a bowl skater or a transition skater, maybe going up to like a 54 to 56 wheel might make sense for you. But again, size, that's going to be personal preference as well. The difference in your setup is going to depend on the type of stuff you skate. Just something to be aware of. All right, let's skate a little bit. I've done a lot of talking. Gosh, the heel flips feel awesome today. Kickflip. Nope. Kind of hopped off early there. That was my bad. All right. Let's talk about no nollie. Let's talk about trucks. Trucks are going to be the most important part of your first skateboard purchase. And here's why. Trucks, they will last with you for maybe even like 10 skateboard decks. You can probably make a pair of trucks last. If you're a new skater and you're not ollieing huge gaps, and you're not doing a crazy amount of grinds, then your trucks are probably going to last you maybe even 3-4 years. So getting a good set of trucks is important. And they also are going to kind of dictate your deck size as well, which we'll talk about in a moment. All right, let's get a kickflip right here. I'm feeling a kickflip. Oh, wow, I did not commit to that at all. Oh, I committed to it, but it was ugly. The reason I say the trucks could impact, nollie shove it, the size of your deck is because you typically want the width of your trucks to be within 1/4 of an inch of the width of your deck. So, for example, if you got 8-inch trucks, the recommended deck size for that would be 775 up to 825. So most people would just get 8-inch deck with 8-inch trucks. I currently am riding 8.25-inch trucks with 8.25-inch deck, but I like to stick with the same truck size as deck size, just preference, and it makes it easier for me to kind of keep track of in my mind. I have skated like an 8.138 deck size and things like that, but it's just easy for me to remember 8.25 trucks, 8.25 deck. One thing to keep in mind is some companies will measure the hanger width, so where my fingers are currently pointed, kind of between the inside of the wheels, rather than the entire axle's width. So if you see a number that's in the 5s, that's probably the hanger width. So you probably just need to like search online and find a conversion. I always try to measure based on axle width. So again, mine are 8.25 trucks. Now, there are, I would say as long as you're getting trucks from one of the most reputable brands, you're gonna be fine. Each truck has a set of characteristics that are going to benefit it. Each truck has a set of characteristics that are going to be beneficial and a set of characteristics that are going to be downsides. So for example, indies are very durable, independents are very durable, but they're a little bit heavier typically unless you get a hollow, which then reduces the durability. And indies are also a little bit more turny, which is beneficial, but also makes controlling maybe slightly more difficult. Thunders, it's another big brand. Thunder trucks. A Thunder truck is a really good middle ground. They're a little bit lighter than an independent. They have a pretty nice turn where it feels like with a Thunder truck, yeah, the turning just feels really nice. I don't really know how to describe it. It's not like too sharp. Indies can feel like too sharp of a turn sometimes. Venture is another really popular brand. Venture is what I'm currently skating. I like Ventures for their stability. They don't have a sharp initial turn. So if I land a trick slightly off balance, I don't feel like my board is shooting me to the left or the right. But it has the downside of being less turny than the other two trucks. Yeah, as long as you're, honestly, what I would say, gosh, heel flips feel like the trick of the day, don't they? What I would say is, if you're buying a truck from Independent, Thunder, Venture, any of those big companies, you're gonna be fine. They're gonna work out well. There are another truck that's really popular. Another truck that's really popular is Aces. I do not recommend Aces for beginners. They are even more turny, kind of surfery turny than Independents are. And I don't think that's good for a beginner. I think that's a lot more for an advanced skater. So my opinion would be Aces. They might be a little bit tricky. Oh, okay, that was somewhat decent for the first time trying that in a while. And honestly, you'll learn to like whichever one you get. I've skated all three, and I've enjoyed all three. I don't think any of them are better than any others. It's just a preference. There are a few new players on the scene. Oh, like for example, Grind King came out with their locker trucks, which I actually came up with a logo design for a company that I called Groove, where the groove was already built into the skateboard there. So Grind King actually stole my idea. Obviously, I'm just kidding. My company, Groove, was for a graphic design project for the students that I teach. So kind of funny there. What was I saying? Oh, Grind King lockers have a few benefits of having like an adjustable wheelbase and a pre-made groove for when you're doing 50-50 grinds. I don't think beginner skateboarders are going to be taking too much advantage of that. If you feel like you're on the level of getting close to doing 50-50s, I actually think Grind King lockers could be good for you. But I've also seen that a lot of the first release of them, they're having a problem where a lot of the trucks are breaking. So that's something to be aware of. And I would probably recommend waiting till the next batch goes out to see if they fix the truck braking issue, because you don't want your trucks breaking. One more thing I just thought of with trucks. When you are first skating and kind of in that beginner to intermediate phase, you may be struggling a little bit with balance, and you're going to be really tempted to tighten your trucks a ton. I've seen so many new skaters do that to make their board a little more stiff and less wanting to, less likely to do that. Now, there is a huge downside to that. If you tighten your trucks before these bushings are broken in, you will break the bushings. They'll crack. But bushings do take multiple skate sessions before they're truly broken in, and they actually get harder and more firm as you skate them. So I recommend don't tighten them until you've skated the board for like a week. Then if you do tighten them, only tighten them a tiny bit, maybe like let only 1 or 2 threads on the kingpin show. Don't go any more than that. I typically keep my nut even with the kingpin at the top. I found that to be decent enough. Don't tighten it too much. You're going to ruin your bushings and you're going to have to buy new bushings. Oh, maybe not. All right, so we've talked about board width when we talked about trucks. Let's talk about it a little more. The deck, the wooden part. So this is the part that people focus on probably the most, but it's actually not something to crazy stress about, because you will replace it at some point. This is the part that you'll replace the most frequently. I think every new skater should start on a symmetrical board. And what do I mean by symmetrical board? Let me bring out another board. The board I'm currently skating is symmetrical. The nose and the tail are the exact same distance. It doesn't matter which way I flip my board. It's the same both ways. So there's a couple reasons. Oh, and this board, one of my old boards, the nose is larger than the tail. So a lot of new skaters get really confused about what's the nose and what's the tail. The graphic can usually kind of signify which way the board goes, but also the nose is just larger than the tail. So pull out a tape measure, figure out which one's larger, and that's going to be your deck. Here's why I believe symmetrical is the way to go for most new skaters. When some of my friends have been trying to learn to skate and they are on a board that is not symmetrical, like a traditional skateboard, they skate it as if it's a twin tail, or a twin nose. So those are some of the terms for a symmetrical skateboard: twin tail, twin nose, or symmetrical. So they'll skate it both ways because they can't tell the difference between the nose and the tail unless you've been skating for a while. So they're looking at it and they're just like, I don't know, it rolls both ways. Let me just skate it both ways. Here's the problem. If your nose is shorter or your tail is shorter, and they're also typically at different angles, the time that it takes for the board to hit the ground is going to be different front and back. So think of it this way. If you're learning how to ollie and you're trying to figure out the timing of your ollie for the first time, and you're skating one time and the tail's hitting the ground, so the tail hits the ground a little bit quicker, and then you fall or you mess up or whatever, you pick up your board and it spins around. The next time you go to practice ollieing, your tail might hit a fraction of a second slower because now you're kicking off your nose. That might not seem like a huge deal, but timing is everything in learning to ollie. So by skating a board that is not symmetrical, you could potentially be completely ruining the timing on your tricks and not even know it. Now, I don't think it's like the hugest deal, but I do think it's enough to throw people off. If you're a brand new beginner skater and every time you try the trick, the timing is a little bit different, it might be messing with you just enough to mess up your tricks. Whereas I would argue skating a symmetrical skateboard where the timing is the same, no matter which side you're kicking off of, is going to allow your body to learn and understand the timing so much better. It's going to allow your body to get in a rhythm and to learn an ollie or things like that quicker. So unless you are committed to understanding that the board goes one direction and it's not made to go both ways necessarily, then by all means, get a traditional popsicle. But I would argue it's just easier to learn on a symmetrical board. It's one less thing for a beginner to think about. That's the big thing, is like, you don't have to sit there and think, which way is my board going? Is it going the correct way? Is this the nose in the front? And also typically another big thing is when you're a beginner, you're learning kind of all tricks that are going off of your tail. You're learning ollies, you're learning things like that. You're not learning nollies or rolling, things that would pop off of your nose. So what ends up happening for a beginner skateboard is you wear out the tail super fast and you have almost no wear on the nose. And so you end up having to get a new board sooner. Whereas if it's a symmetrical board and you're skating both sides equally, then it's going to wear out evenly on both sides and your board's going to last longer. So that's another benefit that's huge for beginner skaters. Then let's also talk briefly just about the width of the board. This is going to be all preference as well. Similar to trucks, similar to wheels, smaller flips faster, wider flips slower. Wider is going to feel way more comfortable because you have more to land on and way more stable. So a wider deck and a wider truck is better for stability, smaller, better for flipping and things like that. I found that, and this is, let me actually skate some while I talk. In the 90s and early 2000s, people typically skated small decks. They typically skated 7.75 might have been the average deck size. 7.75 might have been the average deck size in the 90s and early 2000s. Recently, really, really big skateboards have gotten into trend. People even going all the way up to a 9-inch skateboard. So the size goes in and out of trend depending on time period. A good average size, if you have absolutely no clue what you're ordering, a good middle ground would be like an 8.25 to 8.5. Those seem like the two most common sizes right now. Some people will think about shoe size a little bit. I wear like an 11.5 shoe, so somewhat of a bigger foot, and I'm on an 8.25 deck. I know people who have smaller feet than me. I know someone who has like a 9 size shoe and skates an 8.75. So shoe size correlating to deck size, like, maybe matters a little bit, but not super, super important. It's a little bit, again, of preference. Grip tape. It's the last part of the board we haven't really talked about, is grip tape. Again, it's going to be a preference thing. So the two major players in grip tape, there's a lot more brands, but the two major players are Jessup, which if you're buying a board online, most of the time it comes with Jessup grip free. And then Mob is another one. Mob, most skate shops, pretty much every skate shop carries Mob. Mob is the grippier of the two. The benefit of that is pretty obvious. Grippy grip tape. Stay on the board and flip a little easier. Jessup, the benefit of Jessup is it wears your shoes out slower. I'm currently skating Pepper Grip, which kind of feels in the middle of the two. But yeah, I recommend for newer skaters probably going with Jessup because your shoes are going to last longer. Because what you're probably going to be doing is practicing 1,000 ollies, and you're going to wear a spot out in your shoe. If you're only doing one trick over and over and over again, you're really going to wear out one spot on your shoe. And if that's the case, if you're going to wear out one spot on the shoe, maybe getting the less abrasive grip tape, the Jessup. I'm going to check my notes and make sure I didn't miss anything, but I think that kind of covers everything. So the quick 10-second summary of everything is bearings, don't buy the expensive ones, buy the cheap ones, Bones or Bronsons. Wheels, Bones X Formula, Spitfire soft sliders, or Dragon Formula. Trucks, 8.25 to 8.5 is probably your middle range. You can go up or lower depending on what you want, or maybe even depending on your body size. Buy from either Independence, Ventures, or Thunders, a reputable brand, and you will be a-okay. Someone's flying a helicopter right over there. Buy from a reputable brand and you'll be fine. Aces might be a little too squirrely for a beginner, but as you get better, try Aces. They could be sick. And then your deck, my big recommendation is getting a symmetrical deck to start off skating, because it's one less thing to think about. You don't have to think about which direction your board is facing. You don't have to think about how that affects your pop timing. You can just skate and not have that in your mind. So those are my recommendations. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I would love to answer. Also, if you have been skating for a while and you have wildly different opinions than me, and you think that some of the stuff that I said is really, really dumb and I'm steering people in the wrong direction, please let me know. The places that you're skating, the type of skating that you're doing is going to impact some of the decisions that you make. So yeah, if you're planning on doing flip tricks, go towards the smaller side on everything. If you're planning on skating bowls, transition, go to a little bit of a larger size. Yeah. All right. I'm going to skate some more. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Maybe I'll try to do a line. That's something I keep saying in multiple videos, and I haven't done it yet. So kickflip, nose slide, shove it out. Let's get it. Let's see if we can get that.